Hey everyone, Matthew here, CanadianRenegade.com. Today I'm going to be doing a full review on our Hobbit Stove. I'm going to do a quick cleaning, starting a fire, and talk about some of the features of it and what we think of it overall. A better look at the Hobbit Stove and some of the things that were shipped with it. When we first received the Hobbit Stove, it came with a number of items. One of these was this little stovetop thermometer, which we use quite a bit. It helps us to regulate how hot we're running the stove. We usually just leave it up top here. Also came with an oven mitt, basically, which we don't really use at all, and came with a brush. You can see that we've melted it, so if you do ever get a Hobbit Stove or have a similar brush, be careful that there still aren't some coals in there when you're sweeping the ash. And a little mini scoop, which I've used it occasionally, but I don't use it a whole lot. And then this is for the handles here. It prevents you from burning your hands. You can open and close the bottom and top doors here. One thing that they didn't send that probably would have been nice would have been maybe like a small poker that's maybe about a foot long. We've just been using a stick and that works okay, but that would be like one tool that could be included. That would be nice, but I'm just nitpicking with that. As for the stove itself, the doors fit nice and tight. There's a really good seal on them. You can see we've been using the stove, and it's dirty and needs to be cleaned. The first thing I usually do when I'm cleaning is to just sweep all of the ash through the grate here, and so that's a fairly simple process. I usually don't try to get every little bit of the charcoal, just all the loose ash if I can, and if you leave a little bit in, not a big deal. So that's pretty good. A lot of times I'll just push everything that's left over to the back. The next step is to empty the tray underneath. So it just slides out. Then I usually clean the glass. I'll usually just start by wiping off the loose stuff, trying not to get much on the floor. I'll usually just put a little bit of vinegar on some paper towel, just get it damp, and I'll wipe the glass with that, and then I'll use the steel wool on it and just scrub off the soot, or I guess it's more of like a resin or tar. You can see that's coming off pretty good. I'm not going to get it spotless, this is just a demonstration. And sometimes I'll clean it completely, but a lot of times it's just too time consuming, so I'll just do a quick scrub like this. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now I'll wipe it down with some more paper towel. I think we'll be ready to build a fire here. I experimented with several different methods of starting a fire in the Hobbit Stove, and I find that this kind of like a modified log cabin style seems to work the best for me. I'll usually start off with two side pieces that are fairly large, just to kind of hold everything up off the grate, and then I'll put a little bit of paper in. Make sure it's not too tight so that there's still some airflow coming from the grate underneath, and then I'll put some small pieces of wooden kindling on there. And then I'll usually go a little bigger after that. Once I start building it up, I'll usually put more in the middle rather than towards the sides. So something like that's pretty good. I might have to adjust the paper, but we'll give that a shot. So a couple more things real quick before we start this. I usually leave the door open a little bit so it gets a bit more airflow at the beginning. And I'll usually screw the damper out so that once I actually close the door, there's still a lot of airflow. I find that at the beginning you need a lot more air than once it gets going. Okay, so you can see it's been burning for a while. Now's a good time to add a little more wood. These size pieces are pretty typical of what we might throw in there. We could go a little bigger even once we have some coals, but for right now these are about the right size. It's not hot yet, so I can open it with just my hands, but it's probably not a good practice. One thing I didn't mention when I was starting the Hobbit stove was that I didn't have to prime the flue. With the way that we've installed it, it seems to have really good draft naturally, and we've never really had an issue with smokeback. One of the nice things about the Hobbit stove is that you can choose whether you want to run your chimney out the top of the stove or out of the back of the stove. We chose to run it out of the back, and it made a little bit harder to set things up in here because we wanted it to be nice and tight to the wall, but we eventually figured out how to get it nice and tight to the wall but still be safe. And that's nice because now we have a cooktop that we can use. As we mentioned previously in our video of what worked and what didn't in the tiny house, the Hobbit stove does have a tendency to overheat the house when it's not extremely cold out. We don't take that as a knock against the Hobbit stove. We're actually very happy with it. Overall, we would rate the Hobbit stove as an A. The only problems we've had with it have more to do with the design and size of the tiny house rather than the stove. Okay, so that concludes our review of the Hobbit stove. If you're wondering what our preferred firewood is, you might want to check this video out. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you have any experience with wood burning stoves or any suggestions for us, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. That's a really good smoky.